What's happening, y'all? Welcome inside the Fantasy Stock Exchange. Bush coming at you solo today with another Tale of the Tape episode. Today, we are talking about the first quarterback that I've talked about in these episodes, Malik Willis, quarterback from Liberty. What we're doing in these videos, if you guys haven't checked out the other Tale of the Tape videos, maybe this is the first video of our channel that you're watching, hit the like button, comment any of your thoughts down below, subscribe to the channel if you are new. What we're doing is telling the story from start to finish of Malik Willis and basically getting the whole picture so that you can make an informed decision come your rookie drafts in April, May, whenever your rookie draft ends up being. Make sure to check out the Patreon for tons more rookie content as well. We have our Dynasty rankings available, Dynasty rankings by age bucket. We have, individual positional rankings, top 100s for Superflex and for one quarterback leagues. This video will probably appeal to you if you play Superflex, obviously, because this is the quarterback position. We could be talking about a potential high rookie pick in Malik Willis here. So check out the Patreon if you guys want tons more help with Dynasty there. Link is in the description, patreon.com/fantasy stock exchange. But without further ado, we're going to hit the intro. Okay, so Malik Willis, quarterback from the Liberty Flames. I had to look up the mascot of Liberty because I did not actually know. This is his tale of the tape. Age 22.7 years old, 6 foot tall, 220 pounds. Now, those are official measurements because he was at the Senior Bowl and he got measured. So unlike the other videos that I've talked about already, where I was kind of speculating and going off the, the size measurements of the team's websites and Player Profiler and other websites like that, this is the official measurements of Malik Willis, 6 foot, 220. Basic information coming out of high school. He was a 3-star recruit to Auburn in 2017 as the 21st dual threat quarterback in that class. He goes to Auburn, isn't able to get on the field. For some reason, Bo Nix is starting over him for half the time and transfers to Liberty. At Liberty, he becomes the starting quarterback. He's pretty productive. But again, we have a lot of question marks going forward about Malik Willis. So let's start with the 6 fundamental traits of the quarterback position. Now, since this is the first quarterback video, I'll just give a brief overview of the trait, just so you know why it's important, how we can quantify it, and who basically exemplifies it best in the NFL. And you'll see somebody on the screen with that trait beside their name. So number one is accuracy, right? You have to be accurate at the NFL level if you want to be a productive fantasy quarterback, a productive real life quarterback. And of course, we need both factors ideally to be true so that players can have a long-term job security along with good fantasy production on the field. Now, number one is accuracy. This could be anything from ball placement, their mechanics when they're, off platform throwing, are they still accurate? All that kind of stuff goes into accuracy, downfield accuracy as well. And we're going to start it off with a bang because this is Willis's biggest weakness, in my opinion, is his ability to throw the ball accurately. And the nice thing about this being his biggest weakness is that I do think it is coachable. And his footworks and mechanics are a big problem. You're going to see a clip on the screen where he kind of just like throws off his back foot and the pass is not on target as a result of that. I'm not a huge technique guy. I never played quarterback. I've never coached quarterback, so I'm not going to dig too much into his technique. But even I can tell that his footwork is incorrect and his mechanics are incorrect. And it's pretty clear that he needs some work on his fundamentals. Hopefully he's working with, a quarterback coach preparing for the NFL draft, and he could showcase those fundamentals and that footwork when he's throwing at the combine and at his pro day and stuff like that, because I do think NFL teams are going to have the same question that I have right now. You can see him very often on film, short hopping throws, airmailing throws, throwing suicide passes like it's going out of style. Again, when we see something on film, we want to be able to match it with metrics. So if I think he's inaccurate, I need to see that he was inaccurate also for it to be true, right? Makes common sense. The metrics bear it out. 61.4% completion percentage is objectively bad. Typically, we want quarterbacks to hit a threshold of about 65%. And 61.4% is the worst in the 2022 NFL draft class among 13 quarterbacks. And we're talking about guys like De'Aaron King and like guys that aren't going to get drafted. So not only is it objectively bad relative to the good quarterbacks in this class or the better quarterbacks in this class, it's objectively bad relative to all the quarterbacks in this class. Advanced analytics too. They don't like Malik Willis as a passer in terms of his accuracy. 81.8% of Malik Willis's passes were deemed to be catchable, which also ranks dead last. Again, 20% of the time nearly, you're throwing a pass, it's not even a catchable ball. 70.4% of his passes deemed to be on target. Again, you guessed it, ranks dead last in the class. So this is a legitimate problem for Malik Willis. It's not a huge problem for the sole reason that I do think it is coachable. I think it's technique related. I think it's footwork related, but we've seen quarterbacks like Carson Wentz, Baker Mayfield, lose their mechanics even at the NFL level with multiple years of experience. So it's not something that I think will ever go away, but I do think if he practices hard at it, if he has a good quarterback coach, they can coach some of that bad mechanics and bad footwork out of him, but it is going to be a problem and a concern for him going forward. Now, the second trait that we're going to get into is arm talent. This one's pretty self-explanatory. How strong is your arm, for one? How good are you at throwing from a variety of angles? Are you good at throwing on the run? All that stuff kind of goes into arm talent, from a big negative from accuracy to a big positive. Obviously, Malik Willis's arm talent is very evident on film. You see a theme with Willis that he's kind of this, like, the fundamental quarterback stuff doesn't come easily to him. It's not something that he excels at, but the stuff that you can't teach is the stuff that he has. And it's kind of like the polar opposite of like Mac Jones last year, who he had all the fundamental stuff that you want to see out of a quarterback, but he didn't have the can't teach stuff, like the speed, the arm talent, all that stuff like that. So here's where the ceiling comes in. If we think of the best quarterbacks in fantasy, right? Who's the best quarterbacks in dynasty drafts right now? Mahomes, Allen, Herbert, Kyler Murray, Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow, Deshaun Watson when he's on the field. These dudes have outstanding arms. They can throw on, a variety of platforms. Even the guys like Burrow and Watson, who don't have the strongest arms in the world, they're great at throwing on the run. They're great at throwing from multiple angles. Arm strength is absolutely not an issue for Malik Willis. He can whistle that bitch through a keyhole. He has a cannon for an arm. You'll see a number of 15 to 20 yard sideline throws. So where he's basically layering the throw is like a scouting term that I've heard a lot of people do, where you have a cloud defender in like a deep zone or whatever, and you have a guy, shading over top, and he'll throw a corner route or something on a rope between two defenders. And you're going to see a clip like that right now. Willis ranks number 2 in this class in big time throws with 40 of them in the 2021 NCAA season. First in big time throw percentage too. So a percentage of all of his throws that were considered big time throws, and big time throws are basically just a metric by PFF. That just means they were a throw of high difficulty. So it was a tight window throw, usually occurring downfield. 11% of the time, he was throwing big time throws on his pass attempts. And that is what you want to see out of a fantasy quarterback. That is the type of ceiling outcome that, Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes present us with, because they have that ability. And Malik Willis definitely has it as well. So number 3 is mobility. This one's pretty self-explanatory. Why it's important for fantasy is because rushing yards and rushing touchdowns are worth more than passing yards and passing touchdowns. This is the Konami factor, right? This is why, Lamar Jackson is so valuable in fantasy. This is why Jalen Hurts was able to be valuable in fantasy. This is why, Trey Lance is a guy that's very highly coveted in dynasty. Same goes for a guy like Justin Fields. Now, obviously, this is a big strength for him. If you know anything about Malik Willis, he's very productive on the ground. He's elusive in space. He scrambles. He can run design quarterback runs as well. This is the draw for fantasy. And the thing I've noticed, just as a side note, about Konami quarterbacks is that everybody knows and understands that they can run. Like, everybody knows and understands that Malik Willis can run in this draft class, but they don't put 2 and 2 together as far as how much fantasy production that actually equates to. And people seem to be surprised when these guys go out and they're putting up 15, 20 points per game without having good passing lines, because they run so much. Jalen Hurts and Trey Lance, even in his limited starts this year, are perfect examples. People like myself included. Jalen Hurts, we kind of underestimated how much of a factor his legs would end up being. And same goes for Trey Lance in the limited amount of playing time that he saw. These guys can carry their fantasy productions despite not being the greatest passers in the world because of how much they run. And the interesting part for Malik Willis at the NFL level is that he's going to have plenty of sell opportunities as a result of this. So let's say you draft Malik Willis at the 105 in your rookie draft this year, and you don't believe in him. You don't believe he's a great prospect, or maybe you've seen some things that give you a little bit of pause about drafting him. Let's say his rookie season, he sits 10, 12 games, and he starts the end of his rookie season for a couple games. And in those, 7 games that he starts, he rushed 60 times over those final 7 games. And he rushed for, 80 yards in 3 of those games. I am telling you, people will be surprised by it, and it will vault him up fantasy draft boards and dynasty draft boards. And at bare minimum, you'll have a sell opportunity if you don't want to continue with Malik Willis as a dynasty quarterback asset. So he led the class in carries, yards, and touchdowns this year. 151 carries, 1,220 yards, and 13 touchdowns. And also, a side note for those of you guys that are doing your own research, because I was actually confused by this as well, but college football deducts sack yardage from rushing yards total. So you're going to see some sources like ESPN and Sports Reference have Malik Willis listed for 878 rushing yards, but that is actually the number net of sacks. It is not his total rushing yards. PFF has it listed as 1220, which is the correct number because in the NFL, they do not deduct sack yardage from rushing yards. And also another side note is that Sam Howell also rushed for over 1,000 yards in this class as well. 8.1 yards per carry for Malik Willis, tied with Sam Howell for number one in the class. PFF rushing grade of 94.5, first in the class by a wide margin. 174.7 PFF elusive rating. Again, this is a dynamic runner of the ball. This is not, Trevor Lawrence who can run. This is not Justin Herbert who can run, Joe Burrow who can run. This is a guy that will be running at the NFL level to the tune of a Lamar Jackson, Jalen Hurts, Kyler Murray, like this level of rushing threat. This is not, your typical, he can run, but he, should pass more. Like, no, this dude should be running the ball at the NFL level. It's going to be his biggest draw for fantasy. It's going to be the reason people are going to take him high in the NFL draft and in the rookie drafts as well. So number 4 is efficiency. And that's a very blanket statement term to talk about playing the quarterback position. But what I mean by efficiency is just creating positive plays, first downs, touchdowns, 20 plus yard chunk plays, and limiting negative plays, sacks, interceptions, fumbles, all that kind of stuff. So basically what efficiency comes down to is, are you an asset to your NFL team or are you hurting them more than you're helping them? And a lot of this analysis is metric based that I'm going to talk about with efficiency. So not a lot of this is on film, because on film, it's hard to tell whether a quarterback's being efficient or not, although you can see it on certain plays. Malik Willis ranked in the 66th percentile with a 78.7 quarterback rating. So again, he's moderately efficient. His 8.5 yards per attempt ranks in the 64th percentile, but here's where shit hits the fan. This year, Malik Willis was one of only 2 quarterbacks with a negative expected points added. And what that basically means is how much you're helping your offense and contributing scoring opportunities to your offense. And De'Aaron King was the only other quarterback that he had in the negative expected points added range. So the fact that he's hurting his team technically more than he's helping it is definitely not ideal. His PFF passing grade of 77.9 ranks second to last in the class. Adjusted net yards per attempt, 6.4, ranks second to last. Again, only De'Aaron King behind him, which is not good company to be in. The biggest reason for all of this is Willis's propensity to take too many negative plays. It's, again, along with accuracy, the biggest problem that I see with his game. It's the reason why he's so raw and why he needs so much coaching. 51 sacks that he took this year, which is the most in the class by a wide margin. 12 INTs, most in the class. 18 turnover-worthy plays, tied for the second most. 3.7% turnover-worthy play rate, also the third highest in the class. This is a dude that takes too many negative plays. For as many plays as he's going to create on his own, get outside the pocket and throw one downfield, he's going to take 2 or 3 more, negative plays, and that needs to correct itself. If you're going to be, creating these great, spectacular plays, you need to do it more often than you're creating negative plays at the very least. And you should probably be doing it at a 2 to 3 to 1 ratio or something like that. So he's got that superhero complex that you don't want to see in an NFL quarterback prospect. He needs major coaching in this area. And if you were doing that shit at Liberty and it wasn't working a lot of the time, imagine when you get to the NFL and everybody's bigger, everybody's faster, everybody's stronger, and more importantly, everybody's smarter too. And they have more experience than you. So you're not going to be able to pull stuff like that in the NFL. Again, this is one of his biggest weaknesses as a player. It is coachable to some degree, but at the same time, he's probably always going to have that in him. He was, probably the best athlete at his high school team and at Liberty and stuff. So he probably thinks he can do more than what he can actually accomplish. So number 5, and I'll speed these up a little bit, is playmaking and deep passing. Again, back to the positive. With the negative plays comes the ability to create something out of nothing. And you're going to see some Deshaun Watson caliber playmaking here. You're going to see some Houdini plays that are always nice, and GMs are going to, and NFL coaches love that shit. But the problem is like the negative plays, right? So if we can limit these and encourage the playmaking and the deep passing element of his game to come out, NFL coaches and GMs, they have big egos. They probably think that they can accentuate the strengths of Malik Willis very well and negate some of the flaws that superhero complex that I talked about. And in terms of deep passing, I kind of lump this category in with playmaking and also in with accuracy to some degree because I don't really know where to put it. But he's surprisingly decent as a deep passer, which is not something I expected to see from a small school prospect. But with 6th highest accuracy percentage on 20-plus yard throws in the class, 50.7 of his passes deemed to be accurate, deep passer rating of 111.4, which is 5th in the class, and also 2nd among the top 4 quarterbacks, Kenny Pickett only being higher than him, and 20.9% of his total attempts coming 20-plus yards downfield. So he was also throwing it downfield often and effectively. So this is a guy that can stretch the field. Obviously, he has a big arm. He can use that to his advantage. The framework is there for Malik Willis. If you guys are picking up anything for throughout this video, he just needs a lot of coaching. And number 6, the final trait that we're going to talk about is handling pressure. And it's pretty obvious that Willis has a knack for evading pressure when he's in the pocket or when, defenders come loose against him. The issue lies when he tries to do too much, which you'll see in this clip, where he has opportunities to check it down, throw the ball away, but he just takes his bad sacks. And this happens, again, repeatedly throughout his film. The other issue is that his mechanics tend to go out the window, which goes back to the accuracy point that I talked about. All coachable issues. The framework is really intriguing in this area. If he can develop this part of his game, it's going to be an asset for him at the next level. If he can evade pressure very effectively and then know when to take the sack or throw the ball away or check it down or, keep the play alive. Guys like Russell Wilson and Aaron Rodgers have a knack for doing that. They know when to hold them and when to fold them, which to me are the two best in this area. So he definitely could be just fine, but he needs a lot of development in that area as well, because some of the wow plays, his yards per attempt under pressure, 7.1, fifth only behind Sam Howell at 7.5 among the top quarterbacks. PFF passing grade against pressure of 53.2, which is 7th among the 13 quarterbacks. So not bad there. And it's also better than Sam Howell, Matt Corral, Carson Strong. And the reason he has, ranking highly in those metrics under pressure is because he will make wow plays every, 2 plays or every 3 plays that he's under pressure. The problem is he's got to eliminate those negative ones, which again, I'm not going to harp on too much. Now let's get to the intangibles, and then I'll get into final grades and stuff like that. The intangibles, again, I can't sit down with Malik Willis. I don't know what his personality is like. I don't know how tough he is. I don't know what his, competitive nature is, how hard he's going to work, all that kind of stuff. That's all speculation on my part. So I'm going to defer to people that maybe have sat down with him, what NFL teams are thinking about him, because they probably have had the opportunity, because he was at the Senior Bowl, to learn about him and learn how, smart of a player is, how good his leadership qualities are and stuff like that. And by all accounts, it sounded like he had a great week in Mobile at the Senior Bowl. So by those accounts, I'm assuming that he works hard. I'm assuming that, he has good leadership qualities, has good football IQ, because if he didn't, we'd probably hear about that at the Senior Bowl. And in terms of red flags, I think there's one major one. Number one, he transferred from Auburn. He wasn't able to get on the field at a Power 5 school, at a big school like Auburn, and Bo Nix was ahead of him, who's not a very good quarterback. Number two, he played at Liberty. So he played at a small school, wasn't great against Power 5 teams. And as you guys can see on the screen, these were the Power 5 schools that he played against. And then also Coastal Carolina, who wasn't Power 5, but was ranked as a top 15 team and ended up winning, the non-Power 5, national championship or whatever. And his stat lines in these 6 games were solid, I guess, but they were definitely worse than the games he played against non-Power 5 competition. Now, there's 2 sides to that coin, and that's kind of what I'm getting to with this last point here. The thing I find most consistent in Willis's games against Power 5 teams was that his offensive line was completely overwhelmed. And 64.2 pass blocking grade against Power 5 teams, 72.4 pass blocking grade against non-Power 5 teams. And against the 2 ranked teams that he's played in his career, Ole Miss this year and Coastal Carolina last year, his offensive line did him absolutely no favors. 40.5 PFF pass blocking grade this year against Ole Miss, 58.4 against Coastal Carolina last year. So again, we're all kind of speculating. Small school prospects are always going to get hit with that label. They didn't play against good teams, and when they did, they weren't very good. But you also got to remember that their teammates aren't very good either, and they're going to have better teammates in the NFL. Their offensive linemen are going to be, 5-year veterans that have made a couple Pro Bowls, not, guys that are going to be working at McDonald's 2 weeks from now. So that's basically what you got to remember about Liberty quarterbacks and small school quarterbacks in general. Zach Wilson had the same problem last year. Everybody wanted to knock on, level of competition, but you can only do so much, and you can only play the teams on your schedule. So let's get into final grades. And final grades, I'm wondering what you guys think my final grade is, because I've done a lot of, praise, a lot of shitting on Malik Willis throughout this video. 1100 is the scale that I grade on. 875 out of 1100 is how I graded Malik Willis as an early second rounder. Now, again, I give him a little bit of a bump because he's a quarterback and not a running back, wide receiver, or, a less valuable position. As it stands, he is the only quarterback I've watched so far. So I have not graded Matt Corral. I have not graded Kenny Pickett. I've not graded Sam Howell. So I have no idea if he's my quarterback 1 or my quarterback 4, but it is clear that he has the highest ceiling to me of any of them, simply due to the fact that he has 1,000-yard rushing upside at the next level. He has Lamar Jackson, Kyler Murray, Jalen Hurts level rushing, not middle of the road. He can run, but he shouldn't. Like, he is a rushing threat, a dual threat quarterback. If you were curious also too, where I had him ranked among last year's quarterbacks, he would have been my QB 6 last year. So I have a lower grade on Malik Willis today than I had on Trey Lance, Trevor Lawrence, Justin Fields, Zach Wilson, Mac Jones. All the quarterbacks in last year's class would have been ranked ahead of Malik Willis as it stands right now. I had a pretty similar grade on Mac Jones, early second rounder. But again, for very different reasons, because Mac Jones was very good at the stuff that Malik Willis isn't good at. But the stuff that Malik Willis has, the physical ability, the arm talent, the mobility, Mac Jones did not have. So it's kind of two sides of the same coin. It's whatever you're kind of looking for. In terms of comparable players, pro comparisons, don't freak out, because the two guys that I'm about to compare them to are very, very prolific players. And one of them could be in the Hall of Fame someday. Deshaun Watson and Steve McNair were the two guys that stood out to me when I was watching Malik Willis. And that's what he can turn into. He's obviously not those players. Deshaun Watson was way too productive for me to actually compare him to Deshaun Watson. And he was much more polished, and he played for a big program like Clemson against very, very good competition. So Deshaun Watson is not my comparison. My comparison is Alcorn State, Steve McNair, the guy that he was in college, not the guy that he became after sitting for a couple of years in the NFL. And we have a raw prospect from a small school, tremendous physical ability, just needs to go to a good situation to help accentuate those strengths. And Steve McNair went to the Houston Oilers. He was drafted in 1995, eventually became the starter for the Tennessee Titans once they, moved cities and stuff. And he had a team with Eddie George, who was, potential Hall of Fame running back. Bruce Matthews, who's in the Hall of Fame on offensive line. Jeff Fisher coaching the team at the time, who was basically like Sean McVay now back then, because he was an up and coming young coach. So we had Steve McNair in a tremendous landing spot for his, skills. And he was much more productive in college at Alcorn State than Malik Willis was at Liberty. He damn near won the Heisman in 1994, whatever year it ended up being. But Willis has a lot of those same traits. He has the arm talent, the mobility, the raw, physical talent that you're looking for at the quarterback position. And I do think NFL teams are going to draft him highly in the top 20 overall picks, top 15, top 10, potentially even, depending on how he performs at the combine in a week from now, and how he performs at his pro days and the interviews and medicals and all that kind of stuff. So in terms of best fits, and then we'll get out of here, scheme or team, as I talked about last year in my how to scout quarterbacks video, which I will link in the description if you guys are curious on my process, because I detailed it. The landing spot of a quarterback is the most complex and impactful thing that'll determine their success. And if we think about the best quarterbacks in Dynasty right now, Mahomes, Allen, Jackson, Herbert, Burrow, Murray, a lot of these guys were far from perfect prospects. Joe Burrow being the closest thing to a perfect prospect. But I mean, Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, these guys were not perfect prospects coming out. They were raw. They had, needed a system built around them. And in the case of Lamar Jackson, I firmly believe that had Mahomes gone to the Hugh Jackson Browns or Josh Allen gone to the Pat Shurmur Giants or something like that, we're talking about vastly different quarterbacks right now than we are in their current landing spots, where they went to great franchises with good coaching staffs, good weapons around them, good GMs, good ownership, all that kind of stuff. Same goes for the misses too. Sam Darnold going to the Gase Jets, and Winston going to the Dirk Cutter Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and Mariota going to the Mike Mularkey Titans. If they had went to different teams, better franchises, better GMs, better weapons, better protection, maybe they're better quarterbacks now. And maybe they're among the best quarterbacks in the league instead of the guys that we're currently talking about. Malik Willis needs a phenomenal quarterback mentor. The ideal landing spot for him is my team, Tampa Bay, with Bruce Arians, who's worked with a number of different quarterbacks, Byron Leftwich, who's played in the league, who's, obviously a quarterback guru in his own right, but I doubt he'll fall that far in the draft. So I highly doubt he's actually going to end up going to Tampa Bay unless we were to make some huge move up for Malik Willis. And I doubt that's going to happen. So I think, given where I think he's going to go in the draft, in the top 20 overall picks, Pittsburgh has been linked to him a million times. We have Mike Tomlin, a great franchise in the Pittsburgh Steelers, weapons around him, offensive line in progress, but I trust Pittsburgh to be able to figure that out. And the Washington football team makes a lot of sense for him as well. They pick 11th in the draft. They have a great O-line. They have Terry McLaurin. They have Antonio Gibson. They have ancillary pieces like Curtis Samuel and Logan Thomas and some other guys like that. And they also have a coaching staff like Ron Rivera and his staff that have worked with Cam Newton, who's a mobile quarterback in his own right. Those two spots make the most sense for me as far as teams that pick in that 5 to 20 range of the draft, where I think Malik Willis will go. So let me know down below what you guys think of Malik Willis. This is a guy that I think in rookie drafts, you're looking at, depending on where he goes, he could fall anywhere between the 101 and the 105, in my opinion. I don't think he's going to go much further down than that because of the rushing ability. Because he plays quarterback in a super flex draft, he's going to be very, very valuable. So let me know what you think of Malik Willis. Is your quarterback 1? Is he your quarterback 4, quarterback 2, quarterback 3? Whatever you think of Malik Willis, leave it down below. What do you think of my comparisons? What do you think of the video overall? Any feedback is appreciated. Patreon.com/fantasy stock exchange if you want to support the channel. Check out Underdog Fantasy as well if you're interested in supporting the channel. Promo code FSE, 100% match back on your money. Peace out, guys, and I'll talk to you soon.